Hi, welcome to Tunze Tech Tips. I'm Roger Vitko of Tunze USA. Purpose of this video series is to show how to maintain our products, common repairs, issues that may come up, and troubleshooting, how to solve them. And today I'm going to focus on the 9004 and 9004 DC skimmers. These are very popular products. I want to show people how to disassemble them, routine maintenance that needs to be done, and how to solve some common issues that tend to come up over time. I hope you'll join us for this series, and I appreciate you watching this video. Thank you. So I'm going to show you the disassembly of a 9004 skimmer. This is the AC model. They're fundamentally the same, except the AC model has AC pump with a US plug. DC model is going to have a DC pump that ends in a controller that you'll use to set the airspeed. The only other difference is DC models, the silencer does not include the air adjustment wheel. That's all done by the controller. AC models have the air adjustment wheel. Cup is quite simple, just lifts off. It's easy to clean and service. This is probably of somewhat limited interest, but the silencer does disassemble. You can remove it from the magnet holder. Main reason you might want to disassemble the silencer would be there's a foam pad in there. Now this pad is not really a filter. You can see there's a considerable air gap between the air intake and the foam pad. It's there to mute noise, but it will collect like smoke, cooking residues, stuff like that. So you may periodically want to wash it, and you can replace them. We do sell replacements. You might also want to extend the airline. You can unplug it inside and unplug it on the other side of the skimmer. The airline tubing we use is 4mm inside diameter, 7mm outside diameter silicone tubing. You can see we have everything reassembled, ready to put the top cover back on. And that's it, it just snaps together. As far as disassembling the skimmer goes, it's best to start with taking the top cap off. This just lifts off. There's 4 tabs that hold it in place. Once we've got that off, the airline connects to a nipple on this plate under the cup. You can unplug that. That'll let us get these pieces out of the way. Now we have our body. Easiest way to do this is to just hook your index finger under one of the inside here and pull. Once you've got one side off, as I have here, then the other side will come off considerably easier. You don't have the tension on it. We've got this plate off. There's 6 tabs that hold it on. Now we've got our intermediate plate that the pump's mounted to. Dismount the pump from that plate. Then we can take the impeller cover off the pump. When we remove this top plate, it just slides out. Air hose and impeller cover is attached. Pump comes out. And then we have the bottom perforated plate. So there are a couple of parts in here that we don't need to remove in most cases. Magnets we generally don't want to take off. There's a spacer here that shims the pump into position. It's not a very important part. It's mainly there to prevent shipping damage. And then there's this plug that if this were a filter body, there'd be an inlet strainer that goes in there. So while we have our skimmer apart, the main things that we need to be aware of in service, and this generally is something you're going to need to do every 6 months, is the impeller. One of the more common mistakes I see is people just soak the whole skimmer, they soak the pump. That does almost nothing. The tolerances in these pieces are quite tight. enough vinegar and water or citric acid and water can't get in these pieces to get them clean. They have to be disassembled first. Removing the impeller, if you prefer, you can use tweezers or small needle nose or even a paper clip, hook a few blades and get them out. My preferred way is to just throw and stop short, but you do have to be careful with that. If you do it on a tile floor and the impeller hits the floor, it's probably going to break. It's a ceramic magnet. It's fairly fragile. The best way to do this is to wrap it loosely with a towel and then throw and stop short. The impeller will come flying out. But that's the basic process. This is our impeller assembly. We have a magnet and the needle wheel. Some things you can check while you have it out. You can see here there is a stop, and the reason that stop is there is on an AC pump. Those of you that are familiar with pumps and motors know that typically a motor has a capacitor to start it. Synchronous aquarium pumps, what they do is the magnet starts first without the resistance of the blades, then it engages on a stop and starts carrying the blades. That gives it a start. But we want to make sure that that's free, that this isn't calcified to the point that it can't free spin. Otherwise, you tend to get a lot of chatter on startup. We also want to make sure the blades, of course, are attached to the magnet securely. This is a key point. Make sure that that hole in the middle is clean. That's what spins on the shaft. The shaft should be rigidly fixed in the motor. It's not removable. If it does come out, that means you neglected it and these parts fuse together. So we want to avoid that because that can seriously compromise your pump. It may ruin it. It may be the end of it, or you know, you might be able to press the shaft back in, but long term that's going to harm your pump. When you buy a 9004 skimmer, this cap that goes over the bottom piece here is in the bag with the spacers. This is an optional part. This enables surface skimming. So it's optional to install it. It is included. But when you install this, then the skimmer actively draws water from the aquarium surface. It skims more effectively, but in a lot of cases you may not need it. If you're installing in the back of an all-in-one and the water's already going through a surface skimmer, there's really no point to having that part in there. And the other reason to not use this part is if you have some excessive bubble issues. If the skimmer is emitting a lot of bubbles, if this part's out, then the air and water mixture is recirculated in the skimmer. So there's less pressure, less bubbles coming out. Then the other thing we need to be attentive to is this impeller cover. This tends to clog with salt. Usually after about 6 months, it's almost completely plugged. You'll need to poke it out with like a bent paper clip or a small drill bit, and then soak it in hot water or water and vinegar and dissolve the rest of the salt. Those are really your main maintenance points on this skimmer. You can diminish the maintenance of this part and keep the skimmer running more efficiently if every month you run a couple ounces of hot water through this. And that's fairly easy. If you detach the air hose from the silencer, you can put that air hose in a shot glass of hot water. It'll suck the water right in, and then that'll dissolve the salt. And for the small amount of water, I wouldn't bother with heating up distilled water. As long as your water is reasonably good, an ounce of hot tap water would do the job. I wanted to show how to properly install the spacers. I'm going to demonstrate it with this bottom magnet down here because it's more accessible and you'll get a better view. But the first thing we need to do is remove the magnet. You want to be very careful doing that. In general, the magnets are meant to be installed on the skimmer and left on the skimmer. They lock on with tabs, and those tabs can break if they're torqued. While in general, the body this is all German plastic. It's quite solid. It's fairly easy to disassemble without breaking if you just apply the force in the right areas. But the tabs on the magnets can be a fragile part. So we'll need to start with a screwdriver. You can see where the tabs are there, and there's another one there. So we're going to use our screwdriver. I'm going to have to do this off camera, but we pretty much, well, here I can do it. We want to place the screwdriver right where the tabs are. You can see them, and then we're going to gently pry up. And in doing so, we don't want to cock to any one side or place any torque on it. It's just got to be a straight up movement. So now we've got them off, and you can see the tabs I'm talking about. Then we take our spacer and we install it on the magnet. This is pretty simple. It just clicks in. You do need to support this gap in here to get it to go in. Otherwise that just bends. So, okay, so we got that on. Now, when we put it back on the skimmer, the key here is that we line everything up and it's straight, and we're sure that these tabs are started in the holes. You can see there that I've got both teeth started. If you press down when they're not in there, you'll just break them off. So you need to do that cautiously. But then they just click on and our spacer's installed. So while we're on the topic of this extension, there was something else I wanted to cover. Generally, this is going to accommodate most aquarium trim, but if you had some situation where you needed even more space, we sell what's referred to as a magnet extension. It's part 6025.501. This part's fairly misunderstood. I read the comment frequently that all it is a stronger magnet. Well, it serves two purposes. If you needed a stronger magnet because your glass was thicker, these are really rated up to about 3/8 inch glass. Say you had 1/2 inch glass. Well, you can buy the 6025.501 and replace your outside magnet, and then you'll have plenty of holding power. But the other way it can be used is as an additional spacer. You essentially make a magnet sandwich like this, and we've added another 1/2 inch of space. That's what's meant by magnet extension. When you get your magnets, they'll come like this. These are the outside magnets. The inside magnets are already on the back of the skimmer. Be careful with them. If you bring them together, these are quite strong. If you do happen to get them stuck together, I just want to show you how to get them apart. The easiest way is to take them to the edge of a countertop. I'll try to move this here so you can see. But if you push down on the outside one, you can get them apart. Another thing, this is the #1 mistake people make reassembling this skimmer. It causes a lot of frustration. This perforated plate goes in the second slot from the bottom. It does not go in this bottom slot. If this is done wrong, you will never get it together. You will be extremely frustrated. Why does this body have these additional slots that aren't used? There's actually 2. Well, you know, one of the things, we actually build our products in Germany. And to do that in a cost-effective manner, we essentially design Legos. And these Legos have to plug together and make a bunch of different products. And so these slots are for filters, wave boxes, other components that may use the same body. But for the skimmer, this has to be in this spot. So now we're ready to reassemble our skimmer. We'll take the plate, as mentioned, second slot from the bottom. We've got to get our pump back in position because there's a cable notch on this part that needs to go over the cable. So now we put this through, get our cable through that cable notch there. Then we take our intermediate plate We need to clip the pump in. Now that we've got to put our impeller cover back on. That's clicked in, and by the way, if you ever get a brand new skimmer and it's not producing air, check that impeller cover. It can come loose in shipping. Now we've got our top cover. We've got the tail of this plate just lined up with the bottom perforated plate. The other thing you can use as a guide is that this plate on the top that the skimmer cup sits on is lined up with these slots on the side of this plate, and that's going to be critical to all these pieces fitting together. So now you can see it slid together fairly easily. Everything's lined up. Now we just squeeze and it's clipped back together. Once you get the hang of this skimmer, it is very easy to work on and use. Now the last thing we need to do is put this plate on and the silencer. So the easiest way to do this is going to be, before we attach this plate, we attach the air hose to the nipple on the plate the cup rests on. Then we have to align the cable with that notch in there. Clips back on and we are all set. We're all reassembled. Make one last check that all of our gaps are even, that we don't have a tab that's not fully engaged. And we're all good to go. One last thing people ask me about, the manual mentions that you can use this foam pad and install it under the skimmer, under this plate as a bubble trap. Yes, you can do that. I don't recommend it. And the reason for that is that this then becomes another maintenance item. The pad will clog up. Usually if it's a surfactant substance, maybe you're carbon dosing and there's a lot of dead bacteria or bacterial slime in the tank, this will just clog, and then you're going to get bubbles getting pushed out every direction. The cup will overflow. You'll have all kinds of fun. So if you had a reason that you had to use this, like say you're keeping seahorses, or you have something that you think is really sensitive to bubbles, and I personally find the whole idea that things are so sensitive to bubbles, I think it's nonsense. You can open most old skimmers and they're full of pineapple sponges, and we're always told, well, sponges don't live in bubbles. Well, clearly they do. They live inside protein skimmers. It's the same with all these tube worms. Oh, they'll kill my feather dusters. Yeah, well, there's a pile of hard tube worms living inside my skimmer. So I don't believe it, but if you do and you think that everything's going to die because you have some bubbles because you added something, or you can try the sponge, but you're going to need to clean it usually about every week. And the best would be to just take care of the substance that's causing the issue, or adjust the skimmer to where the bubbles aren't the problem, and not worry about having the sponge in there. That's why we don't include it. It tends to cause as many problems as it solves. And I just would really dismiss this old idea that bubbles are this terrible thing that's going to kill everything in your tank. I haven't seen that be the case. If you get some bubbles stuck under a coral, maybe the underside of the coral tissue will die, but it's probably going to die anyway because there's no light on the underside of the coral tissue. So it's it's something I'd take with a grain of salt, and I would just adjust and get the flow straight and get everything worked out to where there weren't a lot of bubbles coming out of the skimmer, rather than use the foam pad.